Recording in progress.
Hello, everyone. We are very glad to see you here at another Seed Forum and iHub events. This is not very usual for us format. We are now more focused on you, your problems, and are going to give the answers you want to get. So feel free to ask any questions and you can write them in chat and we will try to give you all the answers. And I'm glad to give the floor to Steinar, the founder of Seed Forum Global, one of the biggest and the best networks in the world for startups. So Steinar, the floor is yours, and please introduce all of other speakers.
Well, thank you very much, Vadim. It's good to see you again. I believe that some of you has been with us before for these charity events with regards to the situation and the war in Ukraine, provided by Seed Forum and by iHub. And some of you are newcomers. Then I have the opportunity of wishing both you, those of you who have been with us before, and as well those of you who are newcomers to our event, to this event, which is particularly dedicated, exactly as Vadim said, to give you the chance to ask our three serial entrepreneurs and investors on board today anything with regards to your startup activity. We'll come back to that in a moment. Now, Seed Forum is an organization with activities in more than 50 countries worldwide. And we have been doing activities in Ukraine since many years. And we're very happy to say that several hundred Ukrainian startups and entrepreneurs has already been in the Seed Forum process in Ukraine and abroad. And as you know, this event is also in cooperation with iHub in Ukraine, which is operated by Seed Forum Ukraine. Now, the questions you may have to us today might be related to, as I said already, anything with regards to your startup activity. For instance, it could be anything related to your business concept and how you evolve that. It could, for instance, be related to your team. We already had the first event of 3. This is the third event, as I said today. The first event was about actually how to evolve your team. Might be some questions related to your team and how you evolve that. The question is not only, what is your team, but how will your team succeed, right? It might be that you have questions related to your go-to-market strategy, market-related questions, right? How do you actually access international markets and beyond? It might be that you have some questions related to your intellectual property and how you protect that. Might be that you have questions related to how to progress, to accelerate, to gain your traction. Might be that you have a question or two related to how you evolve your revenue stream, or particularly as well in wider perspective, your business model, right, for your startup. Might as well be that you have questions related to how you particularly do your budgeting wise, and as well even with regards to your funding opportunities, not necessarily only with funding opportunity related to private equity from investors, but also to various grant opportunities. But these are just some introductory ideas to get you, I would say, boosted in your mindset with regards to what questions you may be able or interested in asking. We have also prepared several questions already for you, which are mainly investor related. If there are some pauses in your asking questions, we have already some very important frequently asked questions prepared, but we believe that as in our 2 previous events, there will be hopefully a good amount of questions from you as our participants. I'm Steinar. I'm the founder of Seed Forum. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started many startups during the years. I'm regularly a media entrepreneur, but I'm as currently involved also in some very exciting startups, which are on the way to going global. So I'm also an investor, a business angel, which means that I have some successful startups But I also have some startups which are not very successful. And frankly speaking, those startups which I have which were not successful were probably the best learnings. Maybe I don't talk too much about that, but they were very good learnings. That's also how you need to look at the way that you actually do a startup, an entrepreneurial activity. Well, it might be that you're a success and you will have an exit, you will earn money from it. But if it's no success, well, then you just start over and over again, right? So I'm a serial entrepreneur. 20 years ago, I found out that the biggest problem in the world for entrepreneurs like us is simply the access to funding, and mainly from investors. So this is the reason why we started Seed Forum about 20 years ago. And Seed Forum is from core a vehicle that actually gains the opportunity for access to private equity funding from investors, from startups, currently in more than 50 countries worldwide. So this is basically what I'm doing. And I've been working in the Ukrainian innovation startup community since 2007. And I'm very, very happy to see you on board for this event. Together today, with me today, I have three other guys. And Sven-erick, who are you and why are you here, do you think, Sven-erick?
Well, I am a serial entrepreneur and been that since many years, been working internationally in many different sectors. And just as you, I started a lot of companies and made a lot of mistakes, and some are good and some are bad. So maybe I can share some of my experience and help out in this group.
And Henning, why are you here, do you think? Who are you and why are you here, Henning?
That was kind of similar background, at least part of it as Sven-erick. So I've been a founder or co-founder of many technology companies, more than 10. Some of them have been publicly listed, sold some of them, and started from a few people with starting up the companies, leaving them when it was like the one I have today, which is more than 1,000 employees. And I kind of had all of the common roles except a CFO in these companies. So gathered some experience to share there.
Thank you, Henning. And then Berg, who are you and why do you think you are on board in this event, Berg?
Well, I've been working with you, Steinar, for quite many years. I think it's like 16, 17 years altogether, participating in a lot of seed firms globally. I'm an entrepreneur by heart. I'm also an angel investor. I've been involved in over 60 startups altogether. And I also have my own startups I'm working on right now. And yeah, hopefully I learned something down the road, which I can share with you guys.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much as well, Vadim, for hosting the event today on behalf of IHUB. Well, these are some pre-set questions, probably some of the most frequently asked questions from investors, which I'm actually showing on this slide. And we're going to run through each and every one of them, so if you have time. But first of all, already now we have a question actually in the chat. It is from Yekaterina, and Yekaterina wants to know if the investors ask, what are you going to do with the money? This has to do with use of funds planning, right? You have presented a specific capital need and asked for injection of private equity money and invested into your company. And the question is basically, how are you going to spend that money if the question is from investors? And you already have given some feedback on that, Berg. So Berg, what would you say with regards to how do you do use of funds planning with regards to the capital need?
Yeah, I would say this is a very great question, of course, from an investor. You want to know what you're going to do with his money. So, and you need a good answer. And I would say that spending it on holiday or champagne is a very good, that's a very bad answer. The good answer you should give him is exactly what money you can use or you need to use to get the traction that you are predicting in the future, and how you can get the amount of customers you are going for. And all should be like focused on the goals, the main KPIs for the projects. It could be quite detailed also. yeah, I think that should be the
Thank you, Berg. Sven-erick, any additionals from you when it comes to use of funds planning? I mean, if you ask for $100,000, $1 million, how do you do the planning of actually to use that funds, Sven-erick? Any addition to what Berg said?
It depends on what kind of stage the company is in. Is it a very, very early stage? Maybe it's just to create an MVP, to make some tests on the market, to get feedback from customers, or are you later on? So it depends on where in the funnel you are. But I will say, just as Berg as well, you need to have a clear picture of what you're going to do. And what investors like to see is that they want to see that you accomplish something with the money, that are creating a value and making a stand for the company. So you create and you reach the goals that you are set to do. And those goals should be appealing to an investor. It could be the first paying customer. It could be the first exhibition or anything. And please try to have, if it's possible, have so much focus on customers as possible. It's always easier to talk about customers and getting them in than to say that I will have to hire more people. That's not so appealing to an investor. So, but again, it depends on where in the timeline you are with your business. But try to find the right sweet spots that could be appealing to an investor.
Thank you very much. Henning, do you have any additionals to Berg and Sven-erick in terms of use of funds planning?
No, I think it was great answers. So, yeah.
Very well. Well, then you have at least some input, Ekaterina. From me, I think probably as well, in addition to what has been said already, so that when you need to do this, for instance, in an investor pitch, the best way to actually explain how you're going to do how you're going to use the funds, you always need to include a presentation of that into your investor presentation. And the best way of doing that is with a pie chart graph, right, in your presentation. And it is important not to be too detailed, right? Don't talk about, I'm going to spend it for salaries and buying computers. That is about building an organization, not to finalize, a product, but that's actually the consequence of actually having your prototype or MVP ready is actually market launch. And then you ask for money for market launch. So basically a way to do this when you also present to investors is to have the best, as we say, framing for it, right? And how you do that is sometimes a little bit tricky, but it's very important that the investor understands why in the world you need the money, because that's according to basically, as the 2-3 guys already have said, it's because, you need progression and traction with regards to your company. Another question in the chat is how, and it is from Lana, and it is, how can I define the ideal customer? I have no traction yet. I have just my guesses. Basically, where do you start is the question. Let's ask again then, Sven-erick, let's start off with you. How do you start off actually finding the segments, the customers in your go-to-market strategy? Because that's actually what Lana is asking all about. Sven-erick.
Well, it has to go back to the early beginning of finding a problem and solving a problem somewhere for someone or for a whole group. Or if you're inventing something that is completely new and will revolutionize the world or in an industry, but just you have to go back and find the opportunity and be able to describe the opportunity to an investor so they understand the potential in the market. Because if there's potential of a great upside, they are most likely very interested in investing with you. But it has to be a very clear picture from someone that is completely new idea, I think.
Thank you. Henning, what's your input to Lana when it comes to finding the right segments in the go-to-market strategy?
It usually starts, for me at least, it starts when the idea develops, because it usually finds something in the market that you want to improve, make more efficient, lower the cost, or any kind of improvements. And based on that idea, you usually know what kind of target customers you have, and then of course you can do some piloting. You can check with them and see if how they react to the idea. but on the other hand, you cannot risk them killing you there either, because the people is not always so open to new solutions. But at least for me, it starts with defining the whole idea, defining the whole project. I always have the ideal customer in my mind. And then about the second part is to how to reach them. That again depends on the product. So we kind of need a little bit more background information to give a more detailed answer on that one, I think.
Berg, in addition to the other guys, do you have any particular input? You have launched many new products in several markets, Berg. How did you do that?
Well,
I mean, how did you find your best customers?
Well, Lena is guessing, and I think the guessing is the right starting point. You guess something, and then you can test it out through your network. You can talk to friends about this, get their feedback. You can you say you are low on budget, of course, you can split it up and don't use a lot of money on your guesses, but try to test out your guess. And based on that feedback, you can adjust and then adjust your product and go forward, basically. And when you see that this is something that people want, you go for a bigger budget. So the guess is a very good starting point, but you need to research more. Try to find as much information as possible about the market you are trying to penetrate.
Thank you very much. I might just perhaps as well, add on to what you three guys have said, that, basically, Lana, when you define what is called the go-to market strategy, it basically has two main elements. One is actually what are your segments? That basically means who are your type of customers and where are they? What's the geography? Are they in Ukraine or are they outside Ukraine? And which market are they in, right? So just as well, the question all relates, to who are your customers, right? Means where are your customers? So, and these days, I might think it is rather difficult to actually launch products in Ukraine. Who knows? Maybe for some things it's still possible, but this is exactly also the opportunity also to think, beyond the Ukrainian borders to Europe, to Asia, to the US, wherever, right? So don't limit yourself. This also has to do with the big thinking. We are very open to have your questions asked in the chat or in the Q&A, so don't hesitate to ask more questions. We have a pre-prepared question. Now, Henning, you have been presenting to a investor, let's say that, and you are presented, for instance, a capital need of $100,000, $1 million, and the investor comes to you and says, okay, and that's kind of frequently asked question I'm around for investor, Henning. And he asks, how much percentage do I get of the money? What do you say then, Henning? What's kind of your thinking about that?
Yeah, so it really depends on the stage of the company. If it's as soon as you start to earn your own money, that's when your valuation can really improve. And I normally compare us to competitors and see how their PE multiple is, price divided on the EBITDA. So then you will see if your industry is around 8, 10, 12, 15 in multiples, so that you need to benchmark with the industry. If you're in a very early stage, you need to build a valuation on the budget, maybe as far as 5 years ahead, and maybe get acceptance to build the pricing on the budget that is 1.5, 2 years ahead, depending on the trust you're able to gain. So it's many different aspects coming in here, but at least you cannot be totally off your industry peers. And then you usually use competitors, or not necessarily direct competitors, but comparable companies that is publicly listed. And you build a peer group. And if you can get an investor to accept that peer group, which will give you a multiple, then you're starting to build some kind of valuation around that.
Sven-erick, what's your idea when you have the same situation as Henning now said? Any additional input from you, Sven-erick? Are you giving away 50% of the company? Are you giving away 20%? I mean, what's your idea how to do this?
Well, that's different to answer, but what should we say? Where should we start? Again, when you have a new idea, and it's just like Henning said, you have to look at the industries where they are going. But if you are an IT company, then it's more about what kind of solution have you been able to create, and do you have any kind of traction? What do the customers say? Do you have people around you, really good entrepreneur names, or people from any kind of organizations that really likes your product? Maybe be lawyers or others who have a high reputation that actually want to be on your board, maybe, and then they want to be on your advisory board, and they maybe open other channels or whatever it is. Myself, we have always been able to attract very good people to like our ideas, and that brings valuation also when you're raising funds. So because if certain people believe in your business or idea, that will also bring valuation. But again, you have to go back to what Henning said as well, to see what's common in a certain branch. But in the beginning, it's you have to just feel. But also, as we do in Seed Forum, you have to make a plan also to see what kind of money do I need over time. Do I need just one tranche of money or 3, 4, 5 tranches of money? Then you have to start in the right end and make a plan for it, and may also be quite confident that you can achieve the goals that you need to do to take the next step. Of course, anything can happen on the way. It takes longer time, costs more money. It's very common, but again, it has to be some kind of a sweet spot for the investor, and maybe in a future opportunity to invest more money as we go as you go along.
Thank you very much, Sven-erick. The next question I am going to ask you first, Berg. I think this is a good question for you. Basically, it comes from, not clear who it is from. It's in the Q&A, and it says basically, the question is basically about how much efforts and time do you actually need to work and kind of confirm the idea in the market, perhaps, right? Before you actually really go for it, right? It says, please tell me if you think that the idea needs to be confirmed first with regards to solving the problem, or how much surveys and time and things, or how fast can you actually go with regards to the preparations of actually launching an idea, Berg? Do you just go for it, or do you need some level of planning, much planning, less planning? What's your general approach to that, Berg?
Most of the entrepreneurs, they wait too long before they do something. So I think it's better to start early, and but start in the right end, more or less. Like, try to test out your concept and build the deck and budgets and everything as you go down the road. And so I think that will be my starting point, and to have an MVP, to go out there with something very simple, and that an MVP should not look great, because then it's not an MVP anymore. Because when you go to an investor, you say to him or to a potential partner, you said, "This is, we have just used 14 days on this, so excuse us for that, but we just want to illustrate what we think we are going to do." I think that's the right approach, and build as you go forward. And then it's all about going forward as fast as possible. That's another story. So yeah, start now, more or less. Start communicating, start building network. Regarding investors, one of the most important thing is to have an investor network in the end. So start building that as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. What about you, Henning? Did you do a lot of preparations before you started your number of startups, Henning?
Well, yeah. So we kind of so what we started was something that we could prove would work, even if it was a digital platform. We can use logics to explain how it would work. It wasn't so that we were going into a lab phase to see if our idea was possible to realize. So it kind of, so what we did with the preparation was that we were putting a lot of efforts into the business model. So everything was clear how we was going to build it, investments needed, partners, and so on, so that you can see that it's possible to make this happen. So kind of the better you are on preparations and the less risk it is, or at least the less unknowns it is, the easier it would be to get a better price, and the easier it would get to get professional investors onboarded.
What about you, Sven-erick? Do you regularly do a lot of preparations before you kick off in the market? How is that?
Well, in the beginning, I didn't. Maybe there were more fire and just were shooting from the hip. But as you go along, you learn more, and you don't want to make as many mistakes as possible. So it's cheaper to take more time to find out how the customers value your product or your idea. So if you have a clearer picture and you have better understanding, it's much easier to also come up with a better idea and be stronger idea from the start, which also reflects in the evaluation many times.
All right. Hope, well, that's actually some good input. Thank you. We have another question here from Taras, and that question is about crypto investment in the company as an alternative to, I would say, fiat money, right? So if I understand correctly, Taras asks about, I mean, if one does, the preliminary investment in crypto to clear that out, with regards to further settings in fiat money. I see that Henning already gave a feedback to Taras, and Henning, maybe you can do that public for us. What's your opinion about Taras's question, right?
Yeah, if I understood it right, that they would like to do a funding in a company and then transfer part of the fundings and all the IPRs, the rights, the solution to another company. I think it will be best to just be having a structure from day one where you have a holding company that has a sister company, and you do the funding in the holding company, and that's where all the shareholders will be as well. And then the holding company is owning the crypto company 100%, and you can transfer rights, you can give loans, etc., to transfer the funds to the sister company. That's at least that's one setup that could work.
Okay, thank you so much, Henning. We have another prepared question. When it basically comes to funding a company, another very frequently asked question from investor is, what is the valuation of your startup company? And even if you're a very early stage, that question might be asked. What is the valuation of your startup company? And kind of valuing basically the percentage of investment and amount of money to invest with regards to the valuation, current valuation of the company. What do you answer then, Sven-erick, if that kind of question comes up early stage?
Early stage. Again, I'd like to see the team and the product and the idea or the service and the potential in the market. Is there an upside which is worthwhile going for, or is it too much risk, too much problems? Do you need a lot of to get your product maybe licensed on the market? That could take a lot of money and take a lot of time, which also creates a risk for an investor. So what more should I say?
Okay, let's just ask one of the other guys.
Yeah.
Berg, you have the question early stage. You just started the company, you are looking for your first money, and then comes some guy, obviously with some money, and says, "What's the valuation?" What do you say then, Berg?
Yeah, every time that happened where I'm now in Norway, I always reduce the amount compared to America. So, but there are different methodologies around this. But in the end, it's all about negotiations. Like in the Norwegian market, we start with $500,000 US if you have a pretty good idea, you have an okay team, you have maybe a simple MVP. So that's in more or less like the starting point in Norway. But it can also be lower than that based on people who maybe come in with network or deep pockets or a competence that you are willing to pay for in a way by giving away shares cheaply, basically more cheaper than you will give to an ordinary investor. But there are different methods out there. But I posted the Berg Moe method in the chat, which is like you put the figure on each step more or less, or what the startup have generated so far. And then of course the valuation will go up as you go forward normally. And also Steinar, you talked about tranches here. So maybe the first tranche with the investment is on the low price, the next one is quite higher, and the third one is okay. So that could also be a methodology here.
Thank you so much, Berg. Henning, what is your answer when some guy comes early stage and says, you know, what's the valuation? What's your approach to that question then, Henning?
No, I think it would be wise not to be at least too stubborn and say that, no, this is valuation and we believe that this is correct. But be more open, look at the market, how we evaluate if you're going to reach the budget, the potential, the risk factors, and kind of make a discussion around it. And also, if it's a very early stage, then the investors knows that if they push too hard, they can actually push you out of the company quite fast, and then they will lose the engine inside. So I think they have the same interest. If you, again, depends on the investors, but if you have professional investors that is used to be angel investors, I think a good discussion around it is a good approach. But be prepared to have some matches in the industry and valuations to look at that you can compare your company to if your company has a success.
What you're now talking about, Henning, are comparable startups, and that is very important. Thank you very much, Henning, and thank you very much as well, Berg, for actually posting in the chat. You know, the Berg method, which is, to my understanding, one out of 6, and perhaps the best one out of at least 6 great methodologies to actually value startups early stage. What I just wanted to say as an addition to all of you guys is simply that, frankly speaking, to my opinion, after done so many startups in my life, it basically means that valuation early stage actually has no meaning. I mean, valuation has no home in venture capital at all. And unfortunately, it is so that when someone, you know, asks that question early stage, it is very unprofessional, and maybe you should talk to some other investor instead. You know, that is basically my opinion about that. I would almost like leave if someone would ask me that question early stage, because if one comes from background investing in real estate, you know, that gives a completely different, you know, background that has to do with valuation. But startups has really not to do too much with valuation early stage. But as you wisely stated, Berg, yes, with, for instance, the work with, for instance, actually the Berg method, you can actually get to some valuation anyway early stage, which might help you to kind of overcome the problem of that question. Okay, here is a very interesting question coming from Alex. And the question is basically, when you as investors would kill a startup, what is basically your checklist for that? And for that, Alex, I would probably say that you see that parts of that checklist as well already on screen now, right? Because those would be the questions that one should ask as an investor. But maybe those questions would be defined or understood from you that it is killing the startup, but they're not, because they're simply the questions that investors needs to understand to actually invest. And those are the questions. That's actually why we have the forum today, right? The event today, how you should actually plan to answer those questions. That's really what it's about. But let me rephrase then a little bit your question, or we can actually keep it as is and ask you, Berg, if you would kill a startup. Basically, I would say, rather saying, what is the most important question that you would have from an investor to the startup? What would that be, Berg? You have to unmute, Berg. Berg, you need to unmute.
I thought to unmute now. Sorry. Number one, like fraud, that's killing a startup. If the entrepreneur do spend money on things he or she shouldn't do, that's like killing or taking over time, more or less. But if there is a great team, things are in a way floating, but we cannot get any traction from the market. I would say we have to sit down and try to pivot. We have to try, what can we do different? What have we done wrong? What have we misunderstood? And I will not kill a startup before we at least have done one pivot or maybe two down the road. So, but as long as the team is great, I would say that's the most important thing.
Well, Sven-erick, I see that you are typing an input to something here, Sven-erick, but in between doing that, Sven-erick, what's your idea about that question?
It's really a hard time if you start doubting yourself and your business. And especially if you have poured a lot of money in yourself and you have a family that you need to care about as well, and you have limited resources. Still, if you have a dream and if it could work if there's a chance to work on the market, it's worthwhile. But as Berg is doing that, to make a pivot and look at it from different angles, how can we adjust it? Get some advisor on board to help you and that you can actually get advice from and chat back and forth as well, to look at things from the outside is really good. But if it comes to an end, it could be painful. But remember, there are many opportunities. So maybe this was something that you did, you learned from it, and next time you come up with a new idea, you know better, and then you do it differently. Maybe never give up.
I could probably just add on and say that, the challenge is very oftenly so that when from a startupper point of view, I'm a startupper as well, right? It means that from a startupper point of view, you would disagree and you come into quarrel or whatever, problems with investors. Those are the times when things have not gone according to plan. And that origins back to actually basics, because it might not be the right type of investors you have on board. Might not be, that their background is the right, they're coming from some other industry, whatever it is, their understanding of venture capital is not the best. And basically, it's very important also to understand that actually having investors on board, meaning that you as the founder of the company also is an investor with that hat of your head. It's friends, family, and founders, which are the first money you actually have on board in your company, right? And then you actually need to team up with investors to build the startup together. And when that is something, not really interfacing from the beginning, I can assure that things might go wrong and wrong very fast. And that's, a very difficult situation when that happens, when you already have on board investors that you actually disagree with very fast. So it means, what I'm saying is that money is definitely not money. You definitely need to define particularly the type of investors you have on board, where they are, and access them in the right way. And to do that, you need, a pitch deck. We talked about this earlier in the events. We also talked about particularly how to onboard investors into your team in terms of advisory board as a methodology, business agents, how to work with business agents, those things. That was actually the objective of event number 1. Yeah, and then I have one more prepared question, which is then Berg. You ask for instance, $500,000, and the investor comes and say, sure, if I invest $1 or $2 million, how much faster can you go? What do you say then, Berg?
That's a very good question. But one alternative here is to have A and B and C plans, basically, based on how much money you are have the opportunity to raise at any given point. There was one company who pitched to me, and they had different alternatives. They basically said how much money you are willing to invest. They put it into an Excel sheet, and in the other end, they adjusted the prognosis for the growth and updated KPIs. That was kind of interesting. So because you can grow faster if you get more money. So that could be one answer, to have alternative plans. And then an investor will be impressed. I can tell you that, if you can do it as professional as these guys did.
Thank you, Berg. Any other ideas what you would say then, Sven-erick, in addition to Berg? You ask for 500,000 as an example, and the investor comes and says, I'll invest $2 million instead. How much faster can you go, Sven-erick? What will you say then?
I would actually go with Berg on this, because this is quite if you can get that question and sit down with the investor to show them what's really going to happen in an Excel sheet or something, will actually trigger them even more. So they know that you know what you're talking about, and they are also like they will be a part of that process to understand more about the business when you're doing this. So I think that's a very good way to do it. I think that's the best way to do it.
And Henning, what would you say?
Oh, to add on, to continue with the Excel chart. So if you can have inputs that is kind of blank, where you can put in 500,000, you can change to 2 million, and then the parameters would change, then you're really good prepared. And you also have an excellent chance to present mechanisms of your business idea, like scalability. How does it scale? Marketing return of investment. If you put 1 million into marketing, how will that impact the company's growth? So yeah, so be very prepared for that, because that's really an opportunity to shine and build trust.
We have two questions from Taras here, actually. The second one, so I'll take that first, follows actually this question, which we just had now, right? Basically, now I raise the question, if the investor wants to invest more, but then if they want to invest less, why does that actually happen regularly, Sven-erick, when, let's say, Taras presents a capital need of 300,000, but investor only wants to invest 150,000, and he might still have money? Why do you think he would say that? Any ideas, Sven-erick?
Probably that they don't want to take the full risk themselves. So they want to team up with someone else. So don't think that this is negative. It's more that you can tick the box and say, okay, now I have one investor. They believe in us. They are willing to put up 150,000 out of the 300. Now you go and get one more or two or three more investors, and then you're done. So it's easier to promote it when you already have a lead investor. So even if they have more money, they want to share the risk many times. So it's a good way for you, actually, because you have to work a little bit harder to get a few more investors on board, but you have a lead investor, and that's really good. So sign that document and go with that. If you only can get 150 out of it, well, then you have to also rethink what you can do with 150,000. Could I manage? And then come to a point where I can improve the business model even more and get more traction, and then get another seed round again with a higher valuation.
So you actually say that that is as well an opportunity, Sven-erick. What do you think? What do you think about that situation, Henning? It might be that you have experienced it yourself, right? You ask for money, but you get less money. What happens then?
No, as long as you don't fool yourself and say yes to the money, but it will not take you where you need to go, and you end up in a cash flow situation instead. So, but again, it's about being prepared. So normally when you're looking for investors, you have a minimum and a maximum amount that you're looking for, and you should have scenarios, back to your Excel again, which shows the effects of 150, 200, 300, so you can see the impact. But it could be very risky to say yes if you know it's not enough, and you will end up in a cash flow struggle within a certain time, because that could decrease your value in the company if they need to do another investment at a much lower valuation, and you don't have the money to cope with that.
Thank you very much. The second question from Taras is actually about, not being exactly 100% clear or true when you perhaps present things to investors. There is an edge between lying and hyping things up, right? So there is an interface here. And you already commented that question, right? How to deal with that if investors and they understand that the startupper is either hyping in it very far, or kind of even on the edge of lying. And you already commented that, Berg. So what's the input from you on that question, Berg?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is to get the investor to like you. So you have to be very open with the investor. Also about things who are not going in the right way, both personally and in business and so on, because it's trust. This is trust business. You want an investor to give you his money or her money, then you need them to trust you. So if you start lying, then the game is over, and it can be very, very nasty, basically. But you should show energy, enthusiasm, show that you believe in the future in your company and everything. And sometimes it's all about selecting the right words in your pitch, as you also mentioned here, Taras, because to find the right words, and but never lie, of course. And the way I see it is that if you get an investor on board, the right investor is also an investor you can trust with secrets in your life and in your business, and you go together to solve them in the end. It would be a nice story, and many times it's like that.
What about you, Sven-erick? Did you always say 100% true, or did you hype it a little bit sometimes to the investors, or what is the situation, Sven-erick?
I hear you very badly right now, so no, sorry. No, but of course, I'm a sales guy, so of course I can sell. But as Berg is telling you guys, that lying is never okay. That will backfire, not maybe immediately, but sooner or later it will, and you will be put in the corner, and you will have a tough time. But of course, I haven't met one entrepreneur ever, I think, that came up with the perfect plan. But you make a plan and you sell the plan, and anything can happen on the way. That's different.
And what about thank you, Sven-erick. Thank you. Very honest input. And what about you, Henning? Did you always say 100% true? You're a salesman as well, right, Henning?
Yeah. No, I think it's okay to dress the bride. We don't need to sell us down like we kind of is. If you compare Europe to US, for instance, we are much more reluctant to hype anything. And I think all of us know when the line is crossed. We know when it's a pure lie and when there is a hype. And it's kind of, it doesn't matter if it's in business or if it's in personal life. You never start a new relation with lies anyhow. But again, you can enlighten yourself and look a little bit better maybe than how it is.
But I also want to give a warning finger there, because that could be the other way around as well. You can be honest, and doing the best you can with your business. You love it, you put your heart into it. But you might have investors also that are out there to cheat you. So you have to be aware of that as well. It doesn't go one way, it goes both ways. So you also have to be careful about what kind of investor you're choosing for your business, because it will be like a marriage. And if you don't agree and you want to do different things, or they even want to steal your idea, which happened to me a couple of times, then it will be really tough, and it will cost you a lot of money and a lot of time.
You said
So
it
be
happened
careful
to
to
you.
make good contracts from the start.
You said it happened to you that ID theft happened, even a couple of times.
Yeah.
So what did you do then, Sven-erick? Did you just give up, or did you fight it, or what did you do?
No, we fought fighted quite a bit, and we had some mechanisms here in Sweden when we go to court, and we blocked the company from going bankrupt. So we had a team of really professionals. They were a lawyer, it was a banker, and it was an accountant, one of the most prominent in Sweden. And we had a really good idea and the software that was really good. And they actually locked us up through a contract where they tried to steal the software and sell that to NASDAQ in New York. But we were able to lock the company, so they were not able to steal it. But it costed us everything. But we managed to get the company going. But yeah, valuation, the customers that we were onboarding left, so we had to restart everything.
All right. Thank you, Sven-erick. One needs to fight. That's what you're saying. We have another question here from Alex. He's asking about, as part of the financial strategy that he calls a capital table, the financial strategy, the funding strategy for the company to create growth, basically, right? He thinks if he would like to have an advisor on board, for instance, one of you guys, right? As an advisor on board, which percentage as an advisor, financial advisor, for instance, would you take of the shares of the company? And then Berg, you already gave input. So Berg, the word is yours.
Yeah, it all depends basically what kind of role the advisor should have. Like I can get two specific examples. One is an American company where I'm just a part of the advisory board, but small but great advisory board, and each member of the advisory board get 1%. But we don't get a consulting fee on top of that. But this is, I would say, very close to no work. Maybe one chat a month or 2 or 3 when things are happening, but more or less contributing with network and get people to contact the entrepreneur and make things happen, but very easy. And then it can be like I discovered one very interesting idea, or one very interesting entrepreneur. He came to me, but he didn't have nothing. He only had this idea. He needed money, he needed a team, he needed everything, basically. He had 20 followers on LinkedIn, no investors in his network, and 5 million in debt. Then I took 35% of the company and helped him build it. Recruit team, develop the technology, doing applications for funding, and getting the first investors. They say the whole package. So ended up as going from a potential advisor position to be a co-founder of the company. So I would say it's in between here somewhere. And normally accelerator would take 6, 7, 8%. Some of them take 15. So this is it's a very interesting question, but it all depends on how much work there will be for an advisor here. And I always, for smaller project, where I'm not taking 35%, I always want to see some cash also, of course, because that gives me the opportunity to prioritize that project.
Thank you very much. And Do you have the same opinion, Sven-erick? You're also an acting advisor, what Berg says, or do you have some additional examples, Sven-erick?
Yeah, it's in that range actually, and especially when things are about to go wrong in the company, and then they need someone to step in and sharpen the company. That is, of course, getting. Then they have to leave a piece of the company because otherwise it will not work. That's seen that happen before and been a part of things like that as well. So yeah, but again, it's negotiation and what team you are attracting and what kind of valuation value that could bring to the company.
Thank you very much. There is a question here from Andri, and Andri wants to understand your opinion or input with regards to the, let's say, the general approach of the let's say early stage venture capital, family office, whatever industry of opportunities. So actually the idea of in the current, may I say, tense geopolitical situation in terms of possibilities for them to actually invest in early stage startups without yet revenues. Do you have any input? What is your opinion about that, Henning?
I think there will always be looking for investments, and even if the market is demanding, there is always good investments to do as long as you look in the right direction. So just to take one example from the technology where you have cybersecurity, is if you have a good idea there, a good prospect, that is for certain something that people will look into. Robotics is another one. So there will always be niches, and there will always be VCs and angels ready to invest in companies that has the right position for the existing market conditions.
Thank you. Berg, what's your idea about the current situation in the, let's say, global venture capital / family office industry, right? We're talking kind of generally, right? Are they really still and in the future going to invest in early stage startups with no revenues yet?
Well, I think so, but of course the situation is very unclear. For many people, I would say it's quite clear. Everything has to go down even further before it will turn around and go back again. And most of the people who have lost money now are like small cap investors. And many of them have been investing in startups the last, let's say, 7-8 years. So I think we're going to feel it. Maybe it will take some time, but as I see it from an investor perspective, it's a good timing now to invest in startups because it's long-term investing. So it's all about maybe including that in your pitch, that you will be on the other side when all the arrows go up again. But I think we will have some struggle a little bit more now for a period until everything is more clear. Also, of course, the situation in Europe with the war is not the best thing for us here in our region. So, but just push it, and there's always an investor out there who are willing to invest. We signed one deal yesterday for $150,000 US. So I know it's possible.
What's your opinion about the global venture capital community currently and family offices, Sven-erick?
I think it's. I know that there is more money than ever. That's the first one. But the uncertainty on the market with the inflation, with the interest, with the war, with the US, and I don't know. If you look at the charts today, there is nothing that correlates anymore. Gold price versus dollar price, and everything is upside down right now. So I think that the big investors are, of course, always looking for good investments, and you can read about that daily. That's not a problem, but you also need to prove more. There are a lot of money for the right investments, But for smaller ones, it could take a little bit longer time, I think. But again, in bad times, many good companies and ideas come to life. So it's just about never giving up and just keep pushing and find the right partner.
In addition to what you three guys have said, my opinion is that this is exactly the time of opportunities, fortunately or unfortunately, simply because, well, it might be that many are sitting, Paul, but this is also the time when you see actually that, for instance, many new family offices are actually turning themselves around. And this is, to my opinion, what actually happens now. We saw that during the financial crisis, 2007, 8, 9, right? And we've seen it several times after that. And the question is then what happens basically tomorrow? The challenge that you guys have is certainly that you are either in Ukraine, you are outside Ukraine, but you think in a Ukrainian matter. And it is very important that you look at the opportunities that you actually have outside Ukraine, because currently it might be difficulty with regards to the current market situation in Ukraine. It will, of course, be better. And as well with the capital situation, access international investors, so how you basically do that. We talked about that also in our previous event when it comes to actually funding of your startup, right? Okay, so we have one final question for today before we end the show, and that is also a frequently asked question from investors when you start talking to them. And the question is very simply, what do you think, Mr. Startupper, is my earnings? What is my so-called return of investment? And if you have that question, Sven-erick, what do you answer them?
Well, you have to do your homework and look at the potential in the market and go back to your budget and see and see what you have in your numbers, and then go back to the valuation of other companies in the market in your area. But it should be of interest to invest, and then it has to be somewhere in the range from a minimum 3 times the money in a short time, maybe, but somewhere about 5 to 10 times the money. Sometimes if you do really new stuff within DeFi, and I don't know how the NFT markets will go or the crypto markets will go, but there's huge money and a big interest, and there are many new business opportunities. And then you can look at 100x or maybe 1000x's as well. It's again, it comes down to what kind of business you are about to launch. And then they will be excited if they understand the market and the potential.
And then Henning, any input from you about return on investment?
Yeah, again, it really depends on the risk level. Yeah. I mean, if it's kind of a controlled industry, there is founders with experience, they want to have funding, I think they could be happy with 2 to 3, maybe closer to 3 ROI over 3 to 5 years. But if it's high risk, then they need to spread out their investments and they need to have a higher return on investment. So it really depends on the case.
Yeah.
What about you, Berg? What do you say when you have to explain the return on investment?
Yeah, it all depends on what kind of investor you are talking to, as they have said here also. But like a venture capitalist is more or less like looking for 50 to 100 times money back many times. But most of the fundraising we are doing these days, we are using like a rolling convertible note process. And one very interesting thing there is to give a solid discount for investors who go in the first round. So up to 50% discount. So they get the money back, let's say, in 3 to 5 to 6 months, because you say you're going to do the actually fundraising at a certain date in the future. So what you're signing up now is convertible notes. And when this conversion is done, because of the discount, they already have some money back, basically, or they can put something in their books. and which could be favorable for them. But yeah, 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, it all depends on time. You will not give 50 to 100 times back to the investors in 1 year. It's very seldom that happens in the early stage, but during, let's say, a time frame of 7 to 10 years, that should be realistic if you are in the right segment of the market, if you have the right product. Yeah, I think that could be my input on that.
Well, thank you very much, Sven-erick, Henning, and Berg. Just in addition to what you just said, I think it could be just, wise to actually also give the input that, to my mind, I always say that I am a super profit investment opportunity. And by saying that I am a super profit investment opportunity, all investors, professional investors, will know the definition of that. And the general definition of a super profit investment opportunity is a company that goes more than fivefold in less than 3 years. And that is actually what all investors are hoping for. And by pitching yourself as a super profit investment opportunity, you kind of, in a way, kill that question. Because the valuation is the same difficulty when it comes to the future for the return on investment as it is for the current valuation of the company today. So we have one final question from someone here, and that question is about the lean startup strategy. If someone has any experience with the lean startup strategy, and in basics, the question is, the question is with regards to all of this. Berg, I'm not sure if you read it, but maybe you can all three read it. And if someone wants to take this question, which one of you would like? Yes, Berg, would you like to say some words about the lean startup strategy? And if you have any experiences with that related to the question?
Yeah, it's all about moving fast, more or less. And in the lean methodology, it's the MVP who is the central point, more or less. And you can use this methodology with success. What I would say, I would go a little bit further than Rice, the author. I would dig more into market and dig more into competitors, and not do these things very fluffy, say it like that. But the center point there, MVP, to get the MVP out there and fill up with information as you go forward on the different topics that is covered about this methodology. It's very a good way of kickstarting something, and also to use this scheme to have a dialogue in the startup team and get all your things together. Basically, it's also a very nice process, and try to answer all the questions that they are looking for in the canvas. So yeah, I like it very much, of course.
Henning, any experience with the lean startup strategy, Henning?
Don't have too much experience with it, but I kind of like the approach that at least to get the pilot going at the minimum effort. So yeah, but I don't have anything else to add to that.
Sven-erick, any experience with the lean startup strategy, Sven-erick?
No, not personally, but I read books about it, and there are many guidance that you can get. So with the right project, definitely, absolutely.
Exactly. But as Berg wisely said, everyone, progression, traction, acceleration is very important when it comes to actually boost things for growth. And remember, all of you, that investors only invest in things that actually is possibly growing sometime in the future, and if possible, as soon as possible. All right. We're almost rounding this up. I'd like very shortly to give the word to each and every one of you before we kind of close the event today. Henning, do you have any final input with regards to the questions asked today before we end the show?
I think we mentioned last time as well that it's of course possible to reach out to each of one of us to go maybe a little bit deeper in the questions that is there. So feel free. But many good questions today, so thank you for that.
Thank you. And gentlemen, if you wish, you're utmost welcome to drop your email or contact details, whatever, in the chat. So everyone could actually contact you if you wish to do so, Henning, Berg, and Sven-erick. Berg, any final input from you with regards to the questions asked today?
Regarding questions, no, I think we have gone through interesting topics as I see it. So, but since this is a special event as I see it, I wish the participants here the best under these circumstances. And of course, if there's something I can contribute with, please contact me. I posted the email in the chat, and also you see my URL for my blog also if you want to go in there, and can contact me there as well. So Godspeed.
Thank you. Sven-erick, you have the final word today. Any particular input to you with regards to the participants for the questions of today?
No, good questions. There are many things to think about. So, and the learning curve for every one of you who is out there doing the job will be very steep, and you will face difficulties, and you will have really good times. So never give up, fight it, and reach out if there's anything. And there are more opportunities today than ever. So never give up.
Well, thank you everybody for joining the event today. Ask Me Anything. And yes, we have had many good questions. And thank you very much, Sven-erick, Berg, and Henning, for being with us in the panel today. And thank you very much as well, Vadim in Kiev, for hosting us today in the name of Seed Forum Ukraine and iHub. And you can all now see that there are contact details actually in the chat from all our three panelists today. So feel free to contact them if you have any further questions or need any contact with our panelists today. Vadim, I leave this to you to close the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was really nice to hear all the answers and read the questions, and hope we will see someday once again. See you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.